What is a conspiracy? It is a secret plan by a group to commit something unlawful and or harmful. There are many great examples throughout history, from Brutus against Caesar in the Roman Senate on the Ides of March to the plot against West Point by Benedict Arnold during the American Revolution. Many of our brothers and sisters here in America have mistaken our current economic system for capitalism. This has certainly not been the case for some time, at least since the Federal Reserve banking system was created. This false pretense that America's capitalist system is not working for the average citizen must be corrected. The real reason that the United States has been on the economic decline is directly correlated to the expansion of our government and its influence in our everyday lives. The federal government is relieved that most people are blaming our problems on the current system and begging the government to further encroach on our liberties. This is, after all, the plan. Dr. Carroll Quigley claims to be an insider of the super-rich family dynasties with a front-row view of the world's financial power structure. His book Tragedy and Hope was meant to be read by academics and the intellectual elites. Within the book, he exposed with positive connotations the international bankers and their goals. During the past 200 years, while the people of the world, especially within the West, were gradually winning political and individual liberty, starting with the Magna Carta, the major banking families were at the same time nullifying this trend by setting up new dynasties of political and economic control in the form of international financial institutions. They realized that these newly formed governments needed to borrow money in times of emergency such as wars, and by providing such funds from their own private resources with strings and interest attached, gradually they were able to bring both kings and representative governments alike under their control. These dynasties included many families such as the Lazards, Warburgs, Folds, Rothschilds, and Morgans. They were not all Jewish bankers as some people claim. They included Englishmen, Germans, Gentiles, Americans, and Frenchmen. The net effect of this system is to create currency out of nothing, then lend it to the governments and collect interest on it. In 1694, William Paterson obtained the charter of the Bank of England, and therefore the power over England's monetary system. Paterson is quoted as saying, "The bank hath benefit of interest on all monies which it creates out of nothing." 230 years later, Reginald McKenna, who at the time was British Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the head of the United Kingdom's Treasury, said, "The banks can and do create money, and they who control the credits of the nation direct the policy of government and hold in the hollow of their hands the destiny of the people." One of these combines, which started in the 1880s all the way to 1933, was centered in New York and was headed up by J.P. Morgan and Company. The other was based in Ohio and was headed up by the Rockefeller family. Both of these have ties to the Panic of 1913, which ultimately led to the Great Depression and the founding of the Federal Reserve. John D. Rockefeller purchased the Chase Bank. His brother William purchased National City Bank of New York, later merged with Warburg's Manhattan Bank. These are the ones who started the Federal Reserve. Our Treasury Department only prints what the Fed wants it to. This private Federal Reserve system is entirely out of reach to the American public to stop. Technically, the stock of the Federal Reserve is held by 12 private banks. The original 7 Fed board members were handpicked by Colonel Edward Mandell House, who early in his career had represented British and American banking interests. Cecil Rhodes created the modern initiate circle of international control that created the round tables of Britain and the United States, which created the Council on Foreign Relations. In 1958, the CFR membership included the President, Eisenhower, the Secretary of State, John Dulles, Chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, John A. McCone, Director of the CIA, Alan Dulles, Chairman of the 5 largest industrial corporations, 2 of the 4 richest insurance companies, 2 of the 3 biggest banks, publishers of 2 biggest news magazines, president of 3 of the biggest universities, top scientists and journalists, and the Federal Reserve Board. This is essentially the secret government behind the United States. With the CFR directory in control of higher education and mass communication, the human minds become like computers. No matter how efficient they may be, their reliability is only as good as the information that is put into it. Trotsky was financed by British bankers, and by 1917, Lord Alfred Milner was funding communist revolutions in Russia. Communism and socialism have always throughout history been funded by the international bankers. Why is this? Congressman Reese of Tennessee began to investigate the ties between Alger Hiss, who was convicted of being a Soviet spy within the government, the Carnegie Endowment, the Morgan Bank, and the interlocking tax-exempt foundations, but was immediately forced to abandon his investigation. No one has ever since tried. This man was named B. Carroll Reese. Hard to find on the internet, but if you do some research into the investigation. Pressure from above and pressure from below is always the tactic used on the free people of the world. Deliberately create the problems, then offer only the solutions that result in the expansion of government and power. We need to learn from history, or we will be certainly doomed to repeat it. We are certainly within the grasp of the New World Order, and they are certainly advancing their agenda now more than ever through COVID and the initial lockdowns that won't end. People think that we're going to return to normal, but we won't return to normal. They're going to see how much they can push us and what buttons they can push and how far they can go, and then they'll go farther. So I ask every one of you to do some research, figure out the problems, and then offer solutions that counter what these organizations are offering us. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.